there, Servum17 once again. This is my Bayonetta 2 Infinite Climax video walkthrough. This is chapter 9, it's called The Gates of Hell, and once again we're recycling weapons. So I have the chain chomp on my legs that I had at the beginning of the game, and I have the hammer on my main hand. Two weapons which are quite slow, quite unique, and definitely not my favourites, but very silly and very fun to use. At this moment in time I did not have these salamander chainsaws. I'm going to get them in the course of this playthrough. It's the only LP I was missing when I was re-recording this. And the cool thing is, those chainsaws are great. They're not the most stylish, they don't have the most robust moveset, but they're insanely damaging and they're really fun to use, which I was looking for a weapon that would be both of those things, and I think I found it with the salamanders. But this is a pretty tricky fight with two very difficult enemy types together. And that combination is greeds and malicious. So the malicious enemy is the one you want to focus on. He will buff the greeds if you're not careful. However, these two creatures are incredibly dangerous to fight because they're some of the fastest enemies on the game. Of course, they have 3 heads, they have both the elements, they can grab, they can do a lot of quick damage from a lot of different ranges. I actually think they're considerably worse than Fairness and Fearless from the previous game. And it stems from just my ignorance of the game, which I keep speaking of, which is something that's bound to happen. As you see here, I'm getting beaten up quite savagely, and everything was going quite well until this point, and then things kind of fell apart. But the good thing about Bayonetta is, it doesn't really matter how much life you have, you still have just as much capability to come back as you would with full HP. And that is the finest aspect of this game, and of games of this nature. They are all skill. You know, there is a very small amount of luck involved. There will be certain circumstances that require more luck than others, but this is a game where inputting time and practice will always pay off and will always repay what you put in. And not a lot of games have that, and it's a big shame, but for this one, it's almost flawless for things like that. And right now, I'm sitting at about 20 hours in Bayonetta 2, so not too much at all, but I'm looking forward to playing as much of it as I can, because it's just fun. And a lot of the times, we can get away from, you know, the real reason we play games when we complicate it with different, you know, explanations and reasonings for it. But I like to think, from base level, we play them for fun, and it doesn't really get much more fun than this. But you'll recognise the geometry here as we take on some of the shielded acceptances, I think they're called. And I quickly get rid of the guy who once again can buff people too. I believe he's the Enrapture, I believe his name is. So this is an interesting enemy, because normally what I would do is I would do a Wicked Weave to knock them and open their shield, and then I'd do the counter prompt, because it seems to be quite an interesting way to fight them, a bit like I did just then. But this weapon, I'm not too sure how to do the Wicked Weaves with it, because I don't really know the moveset that well, and it's incredibly slow and it takes a while. So I'm kind of messing around with it to see if I can get anything coming through. Right there was me doing dodges to cancel out of moves, to do dodge offset to get a Wicked Weave. And as you saw, the Wicked Weave didn't really do much. And once again we're with Loki, who can die, I believe, because he has a HP bar, which kind of tells you that he could be dangerous if you let him get too low. That is the counter maneuver right there. Right now I don't know a very stylish way of fighting this enemy, aside from using Witch Time to exploit their defenses. Aside from that, I mess around with the Moon of Mahakala to do some parrying, and I mess around with doing the Wicked Weaves into the counter, but as you can tell from the style points, they're not very high, so there's obviously a better way of fighting that creature, or a technique that works better. And then we get this, a double belief fight, and you might see me swap weapons here, yeah you have. And I've mentioned throughout this guide I'm trying my best to mix up the weapons, so I'm always using something different and I don't stay on something too long to make it more interesting for you to watch. My secondary weapon here has a whip, and on these bigger enemies the whip is the ultimate way to control them. And because this is a walkthrough that's not intended to show off or to show you how to do all this insane combos and juggles and elite level gameplay, I'm going to show you strategies that work, that I've discovered, and then I'm going to have a little fun afterwards, but the foundations are always going to be strategies that any level gamer can pick up and do without having to have expert timing, you know, expert precision on spacing and all that kind of higher level play. So the strategy with these guys is very simple: get witch time and then bounce them with the whip. The whip is insanely powerful at keeping this type of enemy on the ground. When he's recovering, he can't do anything, and it gives you an opportunity to both build combo and build damage. And you'll probably never have trouble with this kind of enemy again because of the whip. And I do believe for a new player, or for somebody who is not very good at action games but wants to play Bayonetta from start to finish, the whip is probably going to be the weapon that gets you through most encounters, because it's incredibly good at damaging bosses with a guaranteed hit, and a guaranteed, not necessarily a stun, but it's a hard knockdown. But it's also really fun to use, and it's easy to spam as well. I was watching good old Darkside Phil play this game, and he did a pretty good job. You know, people like to definitely hyperbolize how bad he can be at games, and then there are other times when he is legitimately bad at games, but for the most, he does okay, and this was one of the times where he actually played really well. But if you know the game well yourself, when you watch him, you can tell when he's doing certain things. For instance, if you ever see anybody turning into the Panther a lot when they're trying to avoid damage, it means that they're spamming evade. And spamming evade is the first thing most players will do on a game such as this. And Bayonetta punishes that. If you're going into Panther mode successfully, then you're doing it right, because in Panther mode you do get iframes in those early startups, and then you can obviously cancel out of it and then go back into it, and you can use that as an effective evade when you're not quite comfortable on the timing to just press it once. That is a valid technique. However, if you're just mashing it, sometimes your timing won't be there and you'll get hit, and other times if Bayonetta does a handful of flips in a row, she'll do a penultimate flip, which then leaves you with recovery frames, which you are not invulnerable inside of. And the moral of the story is, you want to probably mash evade until you learn the timings. But even then, I never recommend it, because getting hit is part of learning. Getting hit is part of playing. You're going to get beat up a lot. This walkthrough is a fantastic example of it. The next piece of content that I do for Bayonetta will probably be of a much higher standard than this as far as my player skill and my ability in the game. And this walkthrough is the way it is intentionally to display this, because it shows a progression, but it also shows that you don't have to be perfect to do things. And these games have a very passionate following of people who believe in high level play, and in a lot of cases very exclusionary perfect play. And as much as some of those people are awesome people, really nice people who you can have some great conversations with, not all of them are, and a lot of them are very unforgiving on new players and players that are beneath them. And unfortunately, because they have attained quite a high level with these games, there's a lot of people beneath them, so that it does come off as, you know, a very deluded grandeur kind of way. And even I get accused of it when I try to always say that anybody can do what you see me doing on these videos, and these videos exist for me to impart the knowledge that I learnt when I put the time in. And you know, the next piece of content for this that I do, depending on what it is, it might just be a fun playthrough, is obviously going to be better because I will be a better player then. But the cool thing is, it should at least instill people with just the encouragement of knowing that you will get better. It might not seem like it at times, and it might be very disheartening, but you know, it's one of those truisms that I can't really say anything else other than just keep putting in the time, keep practicing. If you're enjoying it, then that's awesome. If you're not, probably do something different. But this is the Golem. He's in his bird form, and I'm using the hammer. So the hammer is insanely powerful. If you get a level 2 charge on this hammer, you will see some serious damage that it can do. The bird form is really good. This form is hard. He has one of the fastest attacks on the game. Wait for it. Because I ain't going to dodge it, I guarantee it. If he dashes to the left or right, immediately evade. If he doesn't dash and he just does the attack, God help you, because it's wicked quick. So I want him to do it. Do it. There it was. So watching it back, he hesitated a little bit, didn't he? So maybe there is a tell on that attack that I have to learn, but when you're playing sometimes, it feels like it's almost instant. And I do apologise about how loud the chain chomp is. I don't realise just how loud he is when I played with him, because I was listening and watching other people play Bayonetta when I recorded this. I don't know why I did that, because the music and the sound on this game is fantastic, and I love listening to it. It's just sometimes I want to get other things done while I'm doing things. But this is the pokey laser scalpel. This is the mode that is quick and dangerous, but one of the most predictable to loop when it comes to evading and attacking. What I'm doing with the hammer, if you're unfamiliar, is charge attacks on Bayonetta can be held. They can be kept if you know how to use them. So that right there was really interesting. I did a wicked weave at the end of my big combo, anticipating a stun. That was my phone, if you're wondering what that strange emanation was just then. But I expected that the power of this hammer combined with the power of that wicked weave would stun the boss, would make him flinch, maybe he wouldn't be able to continue through it, and I was very wrong, and I took a very big hit. There are ways around that, and it's something through foresight I can look back and say, well, if I'd have done this differently it would have worked. So if you ever find yourself in the animation of those overly long wicked weaves and you want to get that damage payoff, the instant you do it, or even as you're doing it, you can cancel it with a dodge. If I'd have let the wicked weave happen and then cancelled it with a dodge, I would have got witch time and been able to continue attacking. I didn't do it though, folks, and it sucks for my pride, but at the same time it's a good thing to see so that you know what it looks like and you know how to avoid it. But this is the Lopter boss fight. Sorry, he's not called Lopter, he's called the Prophet. And can you remember how I said the last boss had a really fast attack? Well, welcome to fast attacks, because every time this man dodges away from you and comes back with an attack, it's going to be of a speed you're not quite used to. The reason I know this is because I wasn't, and these fights, that was it just then. That was an example of getting the wicked weave and then dodge cancelling to get the witch time and take no damage. The perfect run against this fella is to get him doing what he's doing now. As you come out of witch time, he comes in with a counter fist. You dodge it, you get witch time, you beat him up, he counter fists you like that. If you can get him to do this, great, because then you'll be able to do some big damage. And I don't recommend the hammer here. It's not that good at building combos, and I mean, it wrecks him, it does massive damage, but for some reason I can't turn rank off in my brain. I truly can't, and I'm always thinking about combo meters and stuff like that, so just ignore me. But I do it without thinking. It's you know, autonomic at this point. The thing that kind of sucks in this fight is this part right here. There is this overly ambitious cutscene of him throwing this giant building at you, and you do a massive quick time event. And on Bayonetta 1, after this, we would have had a checkpoint. On Bayonetta 2, there is no checkpoint. So you have to do this full fight on a single checkpoint, and once again, it's rank rearing its ugly head, because I'm imagining what this is going to be like to pure platinum. On one side, you can constantly keep your combo against this boss by holding the gun button and shooting him, which is really effective. I'm not doing that here because I'm focusing on playing with the hammer, but it's a very, very good strategy. However, taking down 4 life bars on Infinite Climax is a tricky thing to do, especially with the bosses in this game, because it's not like Bayonetta 1. On Bayonetta 1, it was only Jean who could do what these bosses do. It was only her who was incredibly evasive, incredibly dangerous the entire time, and she forced you to truly learn how to play, because if you didn't, you would never get a good rank against her. I mean, within reason. You can do Kilgore glitches, and you can use, you know, the Bangle of Time and things. It all depends on how you want to play, really. But you had to learn her. And on this game, there are more bosses like that than there are the big event bosses, and the distinction between Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 1 is this game isn't checkpointed as well. And I know I've mentioned this quite a lot, guys. I'm going to try not to beat it like a dead horse, but I think it's really important, and things that are important to me I have to make known and I have to reiterate, because if we don't bring it to the attention of the people who are making these games that there is a certain part of their game that is inconsistent and not as good as the other bit, it is our duty, our civic duty as gamers and as lovers of games to say about it, to speak up about it, because if we don't question things and if we don't critically assess things and test things and experiment, then game devs can get away with anything. And I know the last thing a developer wants to do is make a bad game or do something that the consumer doesn't like, but at the same time you can't please everyone, and I'm not saying go out of your way to try and hate things. I'm just saying when there is basic fundamentals like a restart checkpoint function or a checkpoint that would make the fight no less challenging but more fun to do as the player, it's the type of things that really should be implemented, and that's a lot what this channel's about. It's about dissecting, it's about helping, and it's about the discussion and the discourse that comes with it. Some people don't understand it, and thus they just go, oh, insult, 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 ad hominem nonsense, and then the other people who have probably subscribed are just joining in the dialogue. And that's one of the greatest things about my channel, I believe, is the fact that we have some of the best dialogue on YouTube, because everybody's willing to look at things from different perspectives. And even if we get into those back and forths, it's never, you know, trying to win for the sake of trying to win or be pedantic. There's always a point behind it. And even if we continue to disagree, and we never agree, it's always, you know, for the love of the game, and not just because we want to be those people on the internet that argue for fun. And I think that's pretty cool. So thank you very much for watching, thank you for listening, and you take care now.